The great chamber of the Galactic Council was silent. Many alien leaders sat in their floating chairs, watching the center of the hall. There, standing tall with pride, was General Throsk, one of the most feared warlords in the galaxy, beside him, chained to the floor, was his monstrous pet, a beast with glowing red eyes and a mouth full of razor teeth. The beast growled low, shaking the ground, making weaker beings in the room flinch in fear. But the one who did not move, did not tremble, was a human. His name was Kane, and he stood in the center of the circle, hands behind his back, calm as a quiet lake. He wore a simple dark uniform, torn and dirty from capture, but his eyes were sharp. They locked onto Throsk's gaze and never looked away. Throsk leaned forward and shouted, "Why aren't you trembling, human?" His voice echoed like thunder, his command meant to break minds. But Kane didn't speak. He didn't show fear, he simply stared, like he was waiting for something, or testing something. The alien council members murmured, "Is he broken?" One whispered, "Is this some human trick?" Said another. Throsk took a deep breath, then pointed to the beast. "This is Malin, devourer of 3 moons," he said. "It eats metal, fire, and flesh." The beast growled louder, its chains rattling like death bells. "But one word from me, just one word, and it will tear you apart." Throsk hissed. He stepped closer, his eyes full of pride and cruelty. "Still, you do not shake?" Kane finally spoke, his voice low. "I've seen worse." The chamber went still again. Throsk narrowed his eyes. "You lie." Kane shrugged. "Believe what you want." The beast stepped forward slightly, the chains pulling it back, its eyes, for a brief second, looked not at Throsk but at Kane. There was something in that stare, something old, like memory. Throsk didn't notice, but others did. One council member leaned to another. "The beast. Is it hesitating?" Throsk raised his hand, ready to speak the word. The secret word that commanded Malin to attack, but he didn't say it yet. He was curious now. He wanted to see what this human really was. Kane looked at the beast, not with fear, but with interest. His eyes scanned at legs, fangs, tail, breathing rhythm. It wasn't just a monster, Kane thought. It was a creature of control, of pain, maybe of memory. "You think that beast is loyal to you," Kane said. Throsk tilted his head. "It obeys my every word." Kane smiled, just a little. "That's not the same as loyalty." For the first time, Throsk frowned. He wasn't used to humans talking back. Most screamed, begged, or fainted. But not Kane. This one was different. "Enough games," Throsk said. He looked to the council. "Let this be a lesson to all. One word and this brave little human becomes meat." The council waited, silent, tense. The beast growled, eyes locked on Kane. Kane did not look away. He breathed slowly, calm. His fingers moved slightly, tapping a hidden rhythm against his thigh, unseen by anyone. A small chip under his skin sent a signal. Far, far away, in the shadow of a nearby moon, a human ship received it. Its crew woke up, red lights flashing. "Signal confirmed," said the captain. "Ready weapons." Back in the chamber, Throsk opened his mouth, but Kane spoke first. "Do it," he said. "Speak the word." Throsk stopped, surprised. "Do you want to die?" he asked. Kane stepped forward once. "I want to see if your beast obeys you or remembers me." The beast roared, louder than ever before. Chains rattled violently, and this time, all council members leaned back in fear, but not Kane. He stood firm, no fear, no tremble, just calm. Throsk looked uncertain now, his hand lowered slightly. "What are you?" he whispered. Kane didn't answer. The moment wasn't over yet. He knew the next move would change everything. Asterisk. The beast stood still, its claws scraping against the metal floor. The chains shook slightly as if they were breathing with it. Malin, the legendary monster, was known across the galaxy for obeying only one word. That word belonged to General Throsk, and with it, he had destroyed armies and burned cities. But now something was wrong. The beast wasn't moving. It stared at Kane, the human, and in its red eyes, There was something strange recognition. Throsk clenched his fist, hiding his confusion. The council was watching, and any sign of weakness would make him look foolish. Still, he couldn't ignore the tension in the air. He stepped forward, speaking with pride. This creature has wiped out fleets, broken warriors, and chewed through steel walls. One word from me, and it will eat this human alive. Kane tilted his head slightly, his voice calm as ever. Then why hasn't it moved yet? That question echoed in the room. The council members exchanged nervous glances. Even the guards near the doors tightened their grips on their weapons. Malin growled again, but it was not a hungry sound. It was something deeper, like it was trying to speak in its own way. Its tail flicked once, sharp and slow. Then it lowered its body just a little. It looked like it was preparing for something, but not an attack. Throsk spoke again, louder now, as if trying to prove control. I trained it with pain. Burned the command word into its mind. It lives for my voice. Then say it, Kane interrupted. Say the word and let's see. Throsk hesitated, just for a second. That was all Kane needed. He knew the alien general was unsure now. I've seen creatures like this before, Kane said, on a planet your empire tried to erase. There was one beast like Malin, but older, more broken. It didn't respond to your words either. Throsk's face darkened. You speak of forbidden things, he hissed. But the council leaned forward, interested now. This was more than just a human prisoner. This was a human with secrets. Kane walked in a small circle, slowly, eyes never leaving the beast. Malin followed his steps, turning its head with each move. Its breathing grew louder, but not wild calm, in sync. Throsk noticed this and felt something twist in his chest. No, he whispered to himself. This is not happening. Did you know, Kane said, that your monster has a number burned under its neck? Throsk's eyes widened. That mark was hidden from the world, known only to the beast's creators. Only someone who's seen one before would know. Kane added. One council member stood up, curious. You claim knowledge of the ancient death beasts? I don't claim, Kane replied. I remember. Whispers filled the chamber. Throsk turned to the beast, rage in his voice. You obey only me, Malin, only me. He raised his voice and shouted the word, Terrorian. The air cracked like thunder. The chains dropped, released. Malin moved in a flash. But it did not leap at Kane. It ran past him, knocking aside a pillar, roaring toward the council platform. Guards screamed. Blasters fired. The chamber turned into chaos. Kane didn't move. He had expected this. The command word no longer held the same power, because Malin wasn't obeying a word anymore. It was following something else, something older, something human. Throsk watched in horror as his greatest weapon ignored him. Obey me. He shouted again, Terrorian. I said Terrorian. The beast paused, looked back, but not at him, at Kane. Then, it returned to his side, growling low. Not in anger, but like a wolf guarding its pack. The chamber fell silent again, except for the sound of the beast's deep breath. The council leader stood, eyes wide. This beast is chosen, he said slowly. It no longer listens to you, General Throsk. Kane looked around at the stunned faces. I didn't come here to die, he said. I came to warn you. The beast lowered its head beside him, not as a weapon, but as an ally, and in that moment, the galaxy changed. Because if the human could tame what no other species could, then what else were the humans hiding? The great chamber still echoed with silence. The beast Malin stood beside Kane, not as a wild monster, but like a shadow guarding its master. No one moved, not even Throsk. The council stared, confused and afraid. Nothing made sense anymore. Throsk had spoken the sacred command word, Terrorian, and it had failed. The beast responded, yes, but not in the way he expected. It didn't attack the human. It didn't destroy anything he wanted. It listened to something else. And now, Kane stood still, his hand gently resting on the side of Malin's neck. The red glow in the beast's eyes slowly faded. becoming something softer, not kind but no longer hateful. The room filled with a soft humming sound, not from the walls, not from any machine. It came from the beast, a deep, rumbling sound. Like it was remembering a song it once knew, Cain knelt beside it and whispered, "You know me, don't you?" Malin blinked slowly. The memory was coming back. In the darkness of its mind, long ago, it had been something else. Not a pet, not a weapon, but a creature raised in labs, tortured by machines, taught only to kill when the word was spoken, eat. Remembered pain, cages, burning light. But then, it remembered something. Strange, a soft voice, a warm hand, a human young, gentle and kind. That human had been there before the beast was taken by Thrausk's people. The council whispered among themselves, "This cannot be. No beast remembers. It has no soul." But Malin did. Buried deep in scars and rage, something had survived, and now, seeing Cain, something inside it had awakened. Cain stood again, facing the council. "This creature wasn't born evil," he said. "It was made this way. I know, because I was part of the rescue team that stormed the breeding labs. I saw dozens of these monsters chained like broken machines. Only one survived the explosion." He looked at Malin. "And I stayed with it, nursed it, calmed it, until it vanished one night. I thought it died. Now the truth was clear. That same beast had been taken by Thrausk's soldiers, rebuilt with cyberflesh, trained again with pain, but the memory never fully died. It had waited, deep inside, until now." Thrausk shouted, "Lies! Human tricks!" He pulled his weapon, aiming it at Cain. The beast growled instantly, sharp and wild, one step forward, and Thrausk froze. Even without a chain, he knew he was no longer in control. "You used pain to control it," Cain said, "but I used kindness. You see the difference now." The beast slowly walked forward, stepping between Cain and Thrausk. It raised its body high, showing power, but its eyes remained locked on the general. This was no longer a weapon. It was making the choice. The council leader rose, voice calm but strong. "General Thrausk, lower your weapon. This court no longer recognizes your authority over the creature." Thrausk's hands shook. His empire had been built on fear. Fear of the beast. Fear of the command word. And now, in just minutes, that fear had turned against him. He dropped the weapon, and it clattered on the floor. The beast didn't attack. It simply returned to Cain's side, like a guardian returning to duty. Cain turned to the council again. "They're more like this one," he said. "Still trapped in breeding labs, still broken, still forced to kill. But they can be reached, saved, just like this." The council chambers, once filled with power and control, now felt heavy with shame. They had watched the Empire use beasts like toys now. A human had shown them that those beasts had memory, feeling, even loyalty, but only to truth. "We are not the monsters," Cain said. "But we know how to survive them." Malin lowered its head gently beside Cain's hand. The room watched in awe. One council member whispered, "It trusts him completely." "No," said another, "it remembers him." Cain looked toward the high windows of the chamber. Far beyond them, in space, human ships were moving closer. They had received his signal and were ready. But Cain hoped they wouldn't need to fight. He hoped this story, this beast was enough to change something, to remind the galaxy that even in war, there could be memory. Even in monsters, there could be light. Thrausk could not understand what he was seeing. The beast that once obeyed only his voice now stood beside the human, like a loyal guardian. The command word had failed, and Cain had said nothing magical, no secret word. He had just stood there calm, quiet, and sure of himself. That calm was more dangerous than any weapon. Thrausk felt it now, not just in Cain's voice, but in his presence. He looked around and saw the council watching Cain with new eyes, not as a prisoner, but as a threat, or maybe something greater, a symbol. Cain didn't shout, didn't brag, didn't threaten. He simply stood tall with Malin beside him. A human and a beast, side by side, like they were meant to be. Counselor Vurix, a long-necked blue-skinned alien, leaned forward and asked, "Human, how did you gain the creature's loyalty without force?" Kane turned his head and replied, "I didn't gain it, I earned it." Throsk scoffed, trying to hide his fear. "No beast respects humans, especially this one." Kane raised an eyebrow. "Then explain why it hasn't ripped me apart." The chamber stayed silent. Kane walked slowly around the platform. The beast followed him, step for step, never taking its eyes off Throsk. "You believe control comes from fear," Kane said to Throsk. "You built your empire by scaring others into silence. But fear fades, power weakens, and when it does, those you ruled will rise." Kane pointed toward Malin. "This beast was not born to obey, it was born to survive. And it remembers those who helped it survive." Throsk growled low. "Enough human wisdom." He turned to the council. "You want to listen to this creature? A weak species from a forgotten world?" "Humanity," Kane interrupted, "is no longer forgotten." Throsk opened his mouth to reply, but Kane continued before he could speak. "You know what scares you?" Kane asked. "It's not the beast, it's me. You're afraid because I didn't panic, didn't scream, didn't beg. You're used to controlling others with loud threats. But what happens when silence stands stronger than your voice?" The council murmured. Some nodded, others frowned. But all were listening. Even Malin seemed still focused, as if it understood every word. Throsk shouted again, hoping to take back control. "He's manipulating you all," he said, pointing at Kane. "He's using tricks, human mind games." Kane didn't move. He let Throsk speak, rant, wave his arms. Then, in a soft voice, he said, "If I were using tricks, your beast would be dead. But it's alive and it chose me." Those words hit harder than any blast. The silence afterward was heavy. Then Counselor Vurix said, "General Throsk, perhaps we must consider that. Your beast is not yours anymore." Throsk stared at the beast. His pride cracked, his jaw tightened. "No," he said softly. "This can't be. I made it." "No," Kane replied. "You broke it." The beast stepped forward, its red eyes locked onto Throsk. It growled not as a pet, but as a judge. It remembered the pain, the cages, the screams, and it remembered who gave them. Kane placed a hand gently on Malin's head. "It won't attack unless I say. But I won't, because I'm not like you." Those words made the room shift. Power had changed hands without violence. No laser fire, no war, just a human with calm. And a creature that had found its choice. Throsk turned to the council, desperate. "We can't trust them. They're dangerous." "And you're not?" Vurix replied. "You raised monsters and called it order." Suddenly, a light blinked on Kane's wrist. A soft blue signal, hidden to most, but he knew what it meant. Above the council planet, cloaked human ships waited in silence. They had tracked his signal. If Kane gave the order, they would strike, but he didn't. Instead, he looked around the chamber. "War doesn't start with ships," he said. "It starts with fear, and peace begins when we stop feeding it." The council was quiet. Then slowly, Counselor Vurix stood. "I move to relieve General Throsk of command until a full investigation is complete." Other counselors raised their hands in agreement. Throsk looked around in disbelief. He was losing everything, not through war, but through the calm voice of one human. Kane watched as the guards moved to escort Throsk out. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just placed his hand again on Malin's head. The beast let out a low, peaceful growl. It was not a monster anymore. It had remembered who it was, and the galaxy would now remember who the humans were too. The tension in the council chamber hung like thick fog. Throsk stood frozen, his face pale, eyes wide. The guards moved toward him, slowly, ready to arrest the fallen general, but his hand twitched, and his lips curled in rage. He was not ready to give up, not yet. His fingers reached toward his belt, not for a weapon, but for a small hidden device. One last hope, one last command. He pressed the button. and a sharp sound echoed through the chamber, a whisper that triggered Mullen's old programming. A voice recording, one word only, played from the device. Terrorian. The word bounced across the walls. Sharp as lightning, it struck Mullen's ears. Vibrating through the creature's mind, a red glow returned to its eyes, brighter and more violent than before. Its muscles tensed, claws extended, and its roar shook the entire hall. The guards stepped back in fear. The council cried out, even. Kane took a step away as the beast snarled and bared its fangs. Throsk laughed, mad and wild. You see now? He shouted. It still belongs to me, always will. He pointed at Kane. Tear him apart. Mullen's chains had already been released. Now it moved, fast and brutal, a blur of rage and power. It charged toward Kane with speed that made the air scream. Kane didn't run. He stood still, staring into the beast's glowing eyes. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. Then, just before impact, he whispered one word. Enough. Mullen stopped, its claws inches from Kane's chest, its breath hot and heavy. Fangs dripping, but it didn't strike. Kane reached forward and touched the beast's forehead. You know that word is only pain, he said softly. It doesn't belong to you anymore. Mullen trembled, caught between two commands, one old and cruel, one new and kind. Its growl became confused, softer, broken, inside its mind. Two voices fought, Throsk's command and Kane's memory. And then, the red in its eyes faded, like fire being swallowed by calm water. The beast let out a long breath, then slowly turned its head, not toward Kane, but toward Throsk. Throsk's laughter stopped. No, he whispered. That's not what I ordered. Mullen growled low, deep, a sound of anger not directed at prey, but at its former master. It stepped forward, slow and heavy, each step shaking the floor. Throsk stepped back, panic in his eyes. Stay back, he shouted. I created you. Mullen didn't care anymore. It had seen what true power was, not in commands or chains, but in kindness, memory, and trust. Throsk ran, trying to escape through a side door. The guards blocked him, raising their weapons. Mullen didn't chase. It simply watched him fall to his knees. No one needed to fight now. The beast returned to Kane's side and sat quietly. The chamber was filled with silence again, a silence that meant something had changed forever. Kane looked at the council. Now you see, he said. The word was never the power. It was fear. But fear doesn't last. Counselor Vurek stepped forward, slowly. He stared at the human and the beast, standing side by side. I have lived through 5 galactic wars, he said, and never have I seen anything like this. Another counselor added. The word was spoken, yet the beast chose peace. This changes everything, said another. About humans. About monsters, about power, Kane nodded. And about what comes next. High above the planet, human ships floated in the black sky. They had received Kane's signal and watched the entire scene from orbit, ready to strike if needed, but no missiles were launched. Because Kane had won without firing a single shot, the beast beside him was no longer a weapon, it was proof. Proof that humans could change the rules, even the ones written in blood and fear. Throsk was taken away, silent, broken. The council voted to end all beast breeding programs, and Kane was offered a place among them, not as a soldier, but as a speaker, a voice of reason from a world that once was ignored. But Kane refused. I'm not here to join you, he said. I'm here to remind you that no voice, no empire, no monster is stronger than the truth. And with that, he turned. The beast followed him quietly. Together, they left the chamber, leaving behind fear and walking into something new. The doors of the Galactic Council chamber slowly closed behind Kane. He walked through the long hall with Mullen beside him. The beast's heavy steps echoed softly, but there was no fear anymore. Servants and guards who had once run from it now watched in quiet awe. Some even bowed their heads, not to the beast, but to the human who had tamed it without a chain, outside. The skies above the capital planet darkened, but it wasn't a storm, it was something else. Something massive, something waiting. Far above the clouds, dozens of dark shapes hovered silently. Human warships, cloaked for hours, had now revealed themselves. They were sleek, black, and unlike anything the Council had seen before. These weren't cargo ships or scouts. These were war-born vessels. Ready, watching, waiting for a single word from Kane. Back inside the chamber, the Council stood frozen as alerts flashed on their data screens. A fleet of unknown vessels had entered orbit. They carried Earth signatures, but their designs were unfamiliar, upgraded, terrifying. Is this an invasion? Councillor Vurex asked in a low voice. Has the human tricked us all? But Kane was already standing at the central platform again. He had returned. This time with no beast. Malin remained outside, sitting calmly by the great gates. Kane raised his hand and spoke slowly. You asked earlier if I came alone, he said. The answer is no. Gasps filled the chamber. The screen behind him lit up, showing the image of the human fleet. Dozens of ships, thousands of weapons, and one symbol on each hull, Unity. A new emblem for humanity's defensive command. I didn't bring war, Kane continued. But I came prepared for it. Councillor Vurex stepped forward, troubled. Why show us this now? He asked, why reveal such power after everything? Kane looked him in the eyes, calm as always. Because peace only works when both sides understand what the other is capable of. For centuries, humans were underestimated, seen as weak, emotional, slow to evolve. But we've learned, he said. We've grown, and we've hidden. The Council was quiet. The image of the ships hovered behind him, each one a silent message. A message that said, you will never control us again. The reason Malin chose me, Kane added, is because I came from a world that understands pain. But pain didn't break us, it sharpened us. Outside, Malin sat silently. But his body was tense, he could sense the fear growing. Within the building, but Kane hadn't given a signal, so he waited, loyal and watchful. Let me be clear, Kane said, his voice firm now. Humanity does not seek to rule the galaxy. We don't want thrones or titles or planets. We want respect. One of the younger counselors stood up, trembling. You're threatening us, he said. This is just another kind of war. No, Kane answered. This is a reminder. If you ever try to chain us again, if you ever speak words of control like Throsk did, then yes, we will respond. And you won't like how it ends. The room stayed quiet for several heartbeats. Then Councillor Vurex raised a hand. We must decide now, he said. Not just about this human, but about Earth. The vote was called. Not a vote of war, but of recognition, and one by one, hands rose. The Council officially acknowledged Earth as a sovereign. Equal power, no longer a forgotten planet in the edge of a spiral arm, but a force with voice, with power, with beasts that remember and humans that never back down. Kane nodded once, accepting their choice. Then he tapped a small button on his wrist. High above, the human ships slowly turned and began to vanish. One by one, they returned to deep space, cloaked again, but not gone. Kane stepped down from the platform and returned to Malin. The beast rose slowly, matching his pace. They walked side by side, not toward war, not toward revenge, but toward balance, because now the galaxy knew the human was never alone, and neither was the beast. They had each other, and behind them stood a world ready to roar if called. The news spread faster than light, across systems, across empires, across species. The beast of legend had chosen a human, and the Council, the highest power in the galaxy, had bowed to Earth. The galaxy had changed in one day, not through war, but through something worse to the old ruler's humiliation. On a cold moon station orbiting the capital world, a group of alien generals sat in silence. They had ruled with fear for centuries, but now that fear had shifted, no one feared them. Today, they feared the one who did not tremble, the one who stood still while a monster roared. They feared the human Kane didn't celebrate. He stood alone at the edge of the capital city's high tower. Looking into the stars, beside him sat Malin, calm, silent, more like a statue than a beast, but inside, Kane's mind was racing. What had started as a quiet mission to speak before the council had turned into something far bigger. A message had been sent, not just with words, but with proof that humans would not kneel. That even the galaxy's deadliest weapon could choose peace if offered respect instead of chains. Behind Kane, footsteps echoed. Counselor Vurax approached carefully. There was no fear in his steps, but there was weight, the kind that comes when an old world ends and a new one begins. You've done something no one expected. Vurax said softly, "You changed how we see your kind." Kane didn't turn around. He simply said, "We were never weak. You just never looked closely." Vurax stepped beside him and watched the stars too. "Are you going to leave?" he asked. "Yes," Kane replied. "My part is finished. What will you do now?" Vurax asked. "Help others remember," Kane said. "Not just humans, but every species you tried to silence." Vurax nodded slowly. "And the beast?" he asked, glancing at Malin. "He's not a beast," Kane replied, placing a hand on Malin's shoulder. "He's free now, like me, down below." A group of young aliens gathered, looking up at Kane with wide eyes. They had heard the story, watched the footage, and whispered his name with respect. The man who faced the monster, the man who didn't flinch, the man who changed everything. And in the darkest parts of the galaxy, things began to shift. Empires that ruled by fear started to fall. The idea that humans were fragile had died, replaced with something stronger: reputation. Kane knew the fear they once used against his people was now returning to them, but he didn't want fear to replace fear. He wanted understanding to replace control, trust to replace dominance. Malin let out a deep breath and looked to the stars. There was peace in his eyes, and somewhere, far away, others like him might still be in cages. Kane would find them. He turned away from the view and began walking toward the landing zone. A sleek human ship waited for him, shaped like a bird of night. Its engines were quiet, its lights soft. It didn't need to roar to show its power. As Kane and Malin walked side by side, the crowd around them stepped back, not in fear, but in honor. They watched, silent and still. As the two climbed aboard the ship, a child waved. Malin saw it, paused, and bowed his massive head just a little. The child smiled. Even monsters could be gentle. The ship rose slowly, quiet as wind, from orbit. Human ships moved aside to let it pass. There was no fanfare, no grand speech, only silence. The silence of respect. The council later met again, this time with a new chair left empty, marked with Earth's symbol. Not a demand, not a threat, just a seat waiting if they ever wanted to talk again, as equals, because now they understood. Fear doesn't rule forever, but truth, it echoes longer than fear ever could. And from that day on, stories spread about a man who didn't tremble, a beast that remembered kindness, and a world that no longer stayed silent. The galaxy didn't forget. It couldn't, because fear had changed sides, and now it spoke human.